Matzati chen v'nech Adonai, Hilechna Adonai b'kirbenu, ki am kshe'oref hu v'salachta, avonenu u'lechatatenu u'lechaltanu, v'yomer, Lani v'ru v'chol ha'aretz v'chol ha'gohim, v'ra'a kechol ha'am, asher ata b'kirbo el maseh Adonai ki norahu, asher ani osei mach.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah be'emet, v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten ha'torah.
You're doing Gomel?
Amen. Michael's going to bench Gomel. So if people would like to follow along with the response that we will say to him, it's on page 173. And he will recite the blessing first, and then we will respond below.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hagomel l'chayavim tovot, shegmalani kol tov.
Mi shigmalcha kol tov, hugmalcha kol tov, Selah.
Page 542, verse 12.
Should I do the Aliyah too?
What?
Or do you want to find?
What?
Do you want me to do the Aliyah too? Or do you...
No.
Okay.
Two Gomels.
Oh, okay.
Ya'amod, Pinchas Rachamim, Ben Chaim David, Aliyah Shishi.
Oh.
Baruch et Adonai Hamborach.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamborach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bahar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten ha'torah.
Amen.
Shmar lecha et asher anochi mitzavcha hayom, hineni garesh mipanecha, tamori v'haknani v'hachiti v'hafrizi v'hachivi v'higivusi hishamer lecha pentifrot brit lioshev haaretz asher ataba alecha pen yihi elamokesh b'kirbecha ki et mitzvotechem titotzun v'et mazav thank you, matzevotam tishaberun v'et asherav tifrotun ki lo tishtachavela el acher ki Adonai Pentikro brit lioshev haaretz v'zanu acharei Elohechem v'zafu le'Elohechem v'kara lecha v'achalta mizivcho v'lakachta mibenotav levanecha v'zanu mibenotav acharei Elohechem v'hiznu et banecha acharei Elohechem Elohei Masecha lo taselach. You want to take it?
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah emet, v'haya olam nata b'torchenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten ha'torah.
Amen. We'll be reciting Gomel again. Well, responding to the recitation of Gomel again on page 173.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hagomel l'chayavim tovot, shegamanel kol tov.
Amen. Mi shigmalchat kol tov, shigmalchat kol tov, Selah.
Yes.
Page 543, verse 18.
Rachel, would you like an Aliyah? That, yes, you, Rachel. Dr. Rachel Lerner to the Bima.
Yeah, my click phone just calls people. You're like, would you like?
We're different people. Ta'amod. Rivka Ariela. Bat Aviv et Zipporah l'Aliyah Shvi'i.
את חג המצות תשמור 7 ימים, תאכל מצות אשר ציוויתיך למועד חודש האביב, כי בחודש האביב יצאת ממצרים, כל פטר רחם לי, וכל מקנך תזכר פטר שור ועשה, ופטר חמור תפתה וסב, אם לא תפתה וערבתו, כל בכור בניך תפתה, לא יראו פני ריקם. 6 ימים תעבוד, ויום השביעי תשבות, בחריש ובקציר תשבות, וחג שבועות תעשה לך ביקורי קציר חיטים, וחג האסיף תקופת השנה, 3 פעמים בשנה, יראה כל זכורך את פני אדוני אלוהי ישראל, כי יוריש גויים מפניך והרחבתי את גבולך, לא יחמוד איש את ארצך, ולא תוכל להיראות בפני אדוני אלוהיך 3 פעמים בשנה, לא תשחט על חמץ דם זכרי, ולא ילין לבוקר זבח את הפסח. ראשית, ביקורי אדמתך תביא בית אדוני אלוהיך, לא תבשל גדי בחלב עמו.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet b'chayei olam natav tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Ta'amod. Eliana. Panina. Famichel Venava. Lelia Maftir. I'm looking to the senior rabbi. We're going to pause now to do Chatzi Kaddish, but we also have to take out the second Torah. Nachon? Put the second Torah on the Shulchan, please. I can put the second Torah on the Shulchan.
I got it. Okay, here. Let's put it right here.
Joey, do you also want to do Chatzi Kaddish?
Yes.
Great.
Yikadal v'yikadash shemehraba.
Amen.
Lemadi v'rakirteh v'yamlich matuteh.
וחייך היום אחד ובחיי דכל בית ישראל בגלה ובזמן קריב אמן יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם עולם יומיה יתברך
Vitar, Vitarma, Vinase, Vitadar, Vitalem, Vitalal, Shemechkud Shabbat.
ברכו
Leila, Mikol Berkata, Veshirata.
תושבחת ונחמתה דאמירן בעלמה. Amen. Is there anybody who would like to lift the Torah? Great. I don't know who just said I'll do it, but come on down. Hamoed Hamagbiya. Rebecca, you want to rap? Hamoed Hagolelet. Please rise for the lifting and wrapping of the first Sefer Torah. Eliana, we'll just take the covering off for him. There you go. Great. Vezot HaTorah asher sam Moshe lifnei Yisrael al pi Adonai beyad Moshe. Eitz chaim hi lemachazikim ba. Eitz chaim hi lemachazikim ba v'tomechei ameu shar deracheha darchei noam lechol nativotei shalom deracheha darchei noam lechol nativotei shalom yain 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 We're going to be on page 935 in Bamidbar in Numbers, chapter 29, verse 23. And you may be seated if you haven't already done so.
Let's move this over here.
Page 935.
Okay, 1 second. I've got to find it here.
Should be to the left, the second column.
Okay, here we go.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Hold the eights, please. Hold the eights. Thank you. Uvayom harvi'i parim asara elim shenayim kivasim v'na'elim v'lakavasim b'miz param kamishpat usirizim echad chatat milvad ola tamid min chata v'nizka uvayom achamishi parim tisha elim shenayim kivasim b'nei shana arba asar tmimim umin chatam nizkehem la parim la elim v'lakvasim b'miz param kamishpat usir chatat echad milvad.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei haolam natan b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Ya'amod hamagbiya. Ta'amod hagolelet. If you're able to do so, please rise for the lifting and wrapping of a second Sefer Torah. Thanks, Jackie. Zot HaTorah asher sa Moshe lifnei bnei Yisrael api Adonai beyad Moshe v'samachta lechagecha ve'ayitach sameach v'samachta lechagecha ve'ayitach sameach v'samachta lechagecha ve'ayitach sameach.
The Haftarah for Shabbat Hamoed Sukkot is page 1260 in the Eitz Chaim. The commentary begins the previous page 1259. If you're following with a different Tanakh at home, you're looking for Yechezkel Ezekiel chapter 38, verse 18.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar b'nviim tovim v'ratzav et divreihem hane'emarim be'emet. Baruch atah Adonai habocher b'Torah uv'Moshe avdo u'Yisrael amo b'nviei ha'emet v'tzedek. V'haya Bayom hahu, Bayom bagogod mahad Yisrael ne'um Adonai Elohim, ta'aleh chamati be'api, uvkinati ve'shevrati dibarti imlo. Bayom hahu, yeh rash gadol al admat Yisrael, ve'ra'ashu mipanai. Degei hayam ve'of hashamayim ve'chayat hasadeh ve'chol harames al hadama ve'chol hadam asher al pnei ha'adama ve'nehertzu haharim ve'naflu hamadregot ve'chol chom ha'la'aretz tipo ve'karati alav l'chol harai cherev ne'um Adonai Elohim cherev ish be'achiv tiyeh v'nishvateti ito b'dever uvdam ve'geshem shotef ve'avnei el gavish esh ve'gofrit hamtir alav ve'al agapav ve'alamim rabim asher ito galilti vehi kadishti venodati le'nei goyim rabim ve'yadu ki ani Adonai ve'ata v'nadam hina ve'el gog ve'amarta ko amar Adonai Elohim hineni elecha gog nesi rosh meshech v'tuval ve'shavavticha ve'shishaticha ve'haliticha mi'arketei tzafon ve'havioticha al harei Yisrael ve'hiketi kashtecha mi'ad smolecha ve'chitzecha mi'ad yamincha apil al harei Yisrael tipol ata v'chol agapecha ve'amim asher itach le'tzipor kol kanaf ve'chayat hasadeh nataticha le'ochla al pnei hasadeh tipol ki ani dibarti ne'um Adonai Elohim ve'shilachti esh b'magog u'v'yoshvei hayim lavetach ve'yadu ki ani Adonai ve'et shem kodshi odia betoch ami Yisrael ve'lo achel et shem kodshi od ve'yadu hagoyim ki ani Adonai kadosh b'Yisrael hine va'av v'niyata ne'um Adonai Elohim hu hayam asher dibarti vayatzu yoshvei arei Yisrael uviaru v'hisiku beneshek u'magen v'tzina bekeshed uv'chitzim uv'makel yad uv'romach uviaru vahem sheva shanim v'lo yisu etzim min hasadeh v'lo yachtevu min hayarim ki vaneshech yavaru esh v'shalelu et shalalehem uvazezu et bozezehem ne'um Adonai Elohim v'haya vayom hahu eten legog mekom sham kever Yisrael kehavrim kidmat hayam v'chosemet hi et hovrim v'kavru sham et gog v'et kol hamona v'karehu gehamon gog ukvarum beit Yisrael leman taher et haaretz shiva chodashim v'kavru kol am haaretz v'haya lahem le'Hashem yom hikaveti ne'um Adonai Elohim ve'anshe tamid yavdilu ovrim ba'aretz mekavrim et hovrim et hanotarim al pnei haaretz letahara mikter shiva chodashim yachkoru ve'avru havrim ba'aretz ve'ra'a etzem adam uvana etzlo tzion ad kavru oto hamekavrim el gehamon gog ve'gam shemir hamona v'tiharu haaretz Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam tzur kol olamim tzadik b'chol darod ha'el hane'eman haomer v'yoseh hamedaber u'mkayem shekol dvarav emet v'tzedek ne'eman atahu Adonai Eloheinu v'ne'emanim dvarecha v'devarecha min dvarecha chor lo yoshuv rikam ki al melech ne'eman v'rachaman atah Baruch atah Adonai ha'el hane'eman b'chol dvarav Rachem al tziongi beit chayenu v'lal v'nefesh toshia b'mehera v'yaminu Baruch atah Adonai mesameach Tzion b'vaneha Samcheinu Adonai Eloheinu b'Eliyahu hanavi avdecha uv'malchut beit David Mashiachecha b'mehera yavo v'yagel libenu al kiso lo yashev zar v'lo yinchalu ad acherim et kvodo ki b'shem kodecha nishpat helo sholech b'nei rosh le'olam va'ed Baruch atah Adonai Magen David Ala Torah ve'al avodah ve'al nevi'im והיום השבת הזה, והיום חג הסוכות הזה, שנתת לנו, אדוני אלוהינו, לקדושה ולמנוחה, לששון ולשמחה, לכבוד ולתפארת. על הכל, אדוני אלוהינו, אנחנו מודים לך ומברכים אותך, יתברך שמך בפי כוחי תמיד לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני,
Shema.
מקדש השבת ישראל והזמנים.
Amen.
Yes, Shkoach,
Shkoach,
Eliana.
Eli. On campus. Shkoach, shkoach. We're going to continue with the service to return the Sefer Torah to the Ark. You can do-
Yes, Ashrei for Larry Herman.
But first, Yakum Prakan, which can be found on page
176, maybe?
Yekum porkan min shemaya, china v'chista Hozman v'itohan v'nomar amen. Mi sheberach avatan ratzach Yaakov v'imoten sarich karech avaleya v'recha kol hakodesh shosem kol kilot hakodesh. וכל מי שעוסקים בצורכי ציבור ובניין ארץ ישראל באמונה הקדוש ברוך הוא ישלם שכרם ויסיר מהם כל מחלה וירפא לכל גופם ויסלח לכל עוונם וישלח ברכה והצלחה
בכל מעשה ידיהם עם כל ישראל אחיהם We rise to say a prayer for our country, the state of Israel, and for peace.
Our God and God of our ancestors, with mercy accept our prayer on behalf of our country and its government. Pour out your blessing upon this land, upon its inhabitants, upon its leaders, its judges, officers, and officials, who faithfully devote themselves to the needs of the public. Help them understand the rules of justice you have decreed, so that peace and security, happiness and freedom may never depart from our land. Adonai, God, whose spirit is in all creatures, we pray that your spirit be awakened within all the inhabitants of our land.
Uproot from our hearts hatred and malice, jealousy and strife. Plant love and companionship, peace and friendship among the many peoples and faiths who dwell in our nation. Grant us the knowledge to judge justly, the wisdom to act with compassion, and the understanding and courage to root out poverty from our land. May it be your will that our land be a blessing to all who dwell on earth, and may you cause all peoples to dwell in friendship and freedom. Speedily fulfill the vision of your prophets. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. For all of them, from the least of them to the greatest, shall know me. And let us say, Amen. Avinu Shabashamayim, Sur Yisrael v'go'alo, Varech Medinat Yisrael, Reshit Tzmichat Geulatenu, Hagen Aleha be'evrat chastecha, Ufros Aleha Sukat Shlomecha, Ushlach Orcha v'yamicha l'rasheha sareha v'yoatzeha, V'taknen be'etzah tova milfanecha, Chazek yedidei mignei eretz kodshenu, V'anchileim Eloheinu Yeshua, V'ater netzachon teatrem, V'natata shalom ba'aretz, V'simchat olam le'yoshreha, V'namar Amen.
May we see the day when war and bloodshed cease, when a great peace will embrace the whole world.
The
The nation will not threaten nation, and the human family will not again know war.
For all who live on earth shall realize, we have not come into being to hate in Scripture. I will bring peace to the land, you shall lie down, and no one shall terrify you.
I will rid the land of vicious beasts, and it shall not be ravaged by war.
Let justice and righteousness flow like a mighty stream, and let God's peace fill the earth as the waters fill the sea. And let us say,
Amen.
Ashrei 181, 151, or 420.
Ashrei Yoshev Eitzachotilu,
Ashrei ha'shakachalash, Adonai Elohim.
Tilat Adonai yedaber pi, v'varech kol basar shem kodsho le'olam v'oed, v'anachnu nevarech yam yatam hallelujah.
Please rise 183, 153, or 422.
Yeah, go for it. She takes one. Hallelujah, et Shem Adonai, ki niska Shemo levado. Oh, I thought you were going to hold it. Teila lechol chasidav
Livnei Israel am kerovo. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
Havul Adonai v'nei
Elim, Havul Adonai kavod va'oz. Havul Adonai kavod shemo. Ishtachavu Adonai v'hadrat kodesh. Kol Adonai alamayim elakavod irim. Adonai alamayim rabim. Kol Adonai ba'kol. Kol Adonai behadar. Kol Adonai shover vayishaber Adonai et azeh alvanon vayar kidem kemoeg Levanon v'Sirion kemo ben reimim. Kol Adonai chotzev la'avotesh. Kol Adonai yachil midbar. Yachil Adonai midbar kadesh. Kol Adonai yechol elayelo vayechesov yeharot v'echalo kulo merkavot. Adonai lama yashav yeshav Adonai melech leolam. Adonai yos le'amo yiten. Adonai yevarech et amo b'shalom.
Yeah, it did. A source sheet at some point, but I don't need to write this second. No, you can keep it.
It's
Chaim hi lamachazikim ba v'tomchei hamehu shar derachei darchei noam v'chol netivotei shalom hashivenu Adonai elecha benash. Shabbat shalom, everyone. Everyone should have source sheets. That's hard to say. She sells source sheets by the seashore. 2 pages, front and back.
Anyone need anything else?
And if you're joining us digitally, the email went out yesterday afternoon that had the source sheet on here. This is going to be a 45 to 60 minute shiur done in about 15 minutes. Okay, the topic deserves more time. But the moment doesn't call for it, and we're also trying to time our service. By Rabbi Schatz's drash recently, basically pulling out meaning and values from halachic sources, from Jewish legal sources, helping us realize that Jewish legal sources are not just telling us what to do, but sometimes why we're doing it. And so I decided to focus on an interesting halachic tidbit in the traditional sources on Sukkot to bring us to an interesting thing to be thinking about on the holiday. So, the first source, the Tur. The Tur, Rabbi Yaakov ben Asher, 13th, 14th century France and Spain. He is the author of the book called the Arba Turim, the 4 columns, the structure of which is the foundation for the Shulchan Aruch. And look what he says regarding Sukkot. And what I want you to think about to try to anticipate the next text is, if you're a commentator on the Tur, what is your primary question on this material? What's your primary question if you're a halachic commentary on the halachic work, the Jewish legal work, the Tur? What's your primary question on what the Tur is saying here? So he quotes the verse from Leviticus Vayikra, which we read on the first 2 days of Sukkot. Basukot teshvu shivat yamim. You should sit in the booth 7 days. Laman yedu dorotechem, so that the generations will know. Ki basukot hoshavti b'nei Israel, so that I, God, placed them in Sukkot. Behotzi'i otam, etc. When I took them out of Egypt. Okay, that's a quote from the Torah. Look what the Torah says. Talah hakatuv mitzvat sukkah b'yetziat Mitzrayim. The verse links the mitzvah of sitting in the sukkah with leaving Egypt. V'chein harbe mitzvot. And also, lots of other mitzvot are connected to leaving Egypt. Not a surprise. Lefi shehu davar shira'inu be'einenu. Because it's something that we, or our ancestors, saw. Uvoznenu shamanu. We heard it. We're witnesses. Ve'ein adam yachol lahachishenu. No one can deny it, although many try to. Vehi hamoreh al amitat mitziyut haboreh. This is the event in history that instructs on the truth of the reality of the Creator. Yit Allah, may God's name be made great. Shehu bara hakol etzono, who created everything according to God's own will. V'hu asher lo hakoach v'memshala. This is the one who has the power and the authority, v'hayacholet be'elyonim, and the ability in the upper realms, uvatachtonim, and also down here, lasot behen kirtzonot, to do exactly what God wants to do. Ve'ein mi shomar lo mata said, there's no one who can tell God what to do. No one can impose God's will upon God. Kasher asa imanu bahutzio otanu me'eretz Mitzrayim uba'otot uboftim. Just as was shown when God took us out of Egypt against Pharaoh's will. Turn the page a little bit, or go to the next page. Starting with the top line of the next page. Even though we left Egypt in the month of Nisan in the spring. He anticipates a question and answers it. Listen, if this is all to commemorate what was happening to us when we left Egypt, why isn't Sukkot in the spring? God did not command us to build a sukkah at that time of year. Interesting reason why. Because that's the summertime. Everybody, it wouldn't be clear that the reason we were doing it was because it's a mitzvat haborei barak, because it was God's mitzvah. Rather, people would assume we're sitting in huts because shehuzman hagshamim, which is traditionally the time of the beginning of rain. Oh, may it come upon us soon. V'derech kol adam latzeit misukato leshev bebeito, and that's exactly the time that people would have been leaving their outdoor huts with shade and going inside their homes, and therefore we dafka, according to the Torah, leave our homes. We leave our homes, to sit in the sukkah, or it'll be clear that the only reason we're doing this silly thing of leaving our very comfortable homes and going outside is because God commanded us to do it. Okay. That's the Torah's opening kind of bid on what Sukkot's all about. Given the first organized manual after the Rambam's Yad HaChazakah, Mishnah Torah, what kind of question might you ask on this text if you were the kind of person to offer a commentary on the Torah? What stands out to you as strange a little bit? He sounds like a what? He's a midrashist. He's giving a sermon. He's talking about faith in God, and this is what proves the existence of God because of the Exodus story. It's a little strange whenever someone who 99.99% of his words are telling you specifically how to do it, that he departs from his norm and says, I want to tell you the underlying value here. I want to link your observance of these mitzvot with a theology that helps you understand why God is the creator of the universe. He doesn't do that elsewhere for the most part. Why does he do it here? Is he departing from his norm? Or is this in some way not a departure from his norm, and we're supposed to learn something about the halachic observance of Sukkot that actually relates to intent and relates to our understanding of why God commanded us to do it? Look at the next source. This is the Bach, short for the Bayit Chadash, right? So the Tur wrote the 4 columns, and commentaries on that are kind of puns on that. So the Bayit Chadash wrote the new house that is being built over the 4 columns. Rabbi Yoel Sirkis, 16th, 17th century Krakow. He's buried in the same cemetery as Rabbi Moshe Isserlis in that old synagogue in Krakow. Look what he says. Basukot teshvu, etc. So he quotes the same verse, you should sit in the sukkah 7 days. And then he quotes the Torah, Talah HaKatuv, meaning I'm commenting on this line from the Torah that said that the verse linked sitting in the sukkah with Exodus from Egypt. Ika lemeidak b'divrei Rabbeinu. It's possible, if you do a close reading of our teacher meaning the Torah, she'ein ze midarko b'chiburo ze. This is not the way he normally does things. Leva'er kavana l'shum mikra, to give some kind of a midrashic, intentional interpretation of a verse in the Torah. He's not a sermonizer. In this book, he might have been interested in it, but in this book, he's not giving divrei Torah. He's telling you how to observe the holiday. Ki lo varak lifsok hora'ah o laharot minhag. His only job in this book is to tell you what to do by law or by custom. Ufo ha'arich leva'er. But here he spends a lot of time. I mean, for him, it's a lot of time. 7, 8, 10 lines. Doing explication, illumination. Vilidrosh, to do a midrash. Hamikra, on the verse. Besukot teshvu. Hey, Tor, don't you know that this is not a book of midrash? This is a book of halakha. Why are you doing it? The Yereli, the Bach says, it seems to me, Lomar Bazet, to say about this, Shesover, that the Torah believes, de kevan dichtiv laman yedu, because the verse itself said, why should you build Sukkot? So that future generations will know the story, etc. Lo kiyam hamitzvah ketikuna im lo yada kavanat mitzvat hasukah kefi pashta. The Bach is saying, the Torah is not general. You don't actually sound to God when you put on tefillin in the morning. If you just put it on properly and say the bracha, according to the halachic system, you're yotze. You've done what you've been obligated to do. Have you missed out on a chance to deepen your relationship with the tradition? Maybe. But there's no foul, no harm. Nothing is lacking. The Bach says, the Torah says, maybe what's different about this, of the intent, kavanat mitzvat hasukah, of the original intent of this law, kafi pashta, according to its simple meaning. Ulichein, bi'er lefi hapshat. Therefore, he went to the pshat of the verse. The ikara kavanah b'yeshivat hasukah, that the main intent of sitting in a sukkah, sheyizkor yitziat mitzrayim, that you should leave, that you should remember leaving Egypt. Then he goes on to say that the Torah does something similar to this in only a few other places when it comes to the mitzvah of tzitzit and the mitzvah of tefillin, and he says that the reason is because those are also placed in the Torah where the Torah seems to link the observance with a rationale behind it. Skip it a few lines, kind of like 10 lines down the middle. Ki lo katav sheyichavein shum kavanah ba'asiyat mitzvah. In general, the Torah does not say you have to have intentional kavanah. I know that's a redundancy. Specific kavanah when you do a mitzvah. Ki hamakayem mitzvah kedina yotzeba. If you did the halacha, the way you're supposed to do it, you've completed your obligation. But you fulfilled your obligation. Aval b'tzitzit shekatav behen laman tizkaru. But when it comes to tzitzit, where the Torah says, in order that you remember, and tefillin, where it says, laman tia Torah Hashem beficha, and with tefillin, where the Torah says, you should do this so that God's Torah is on your mouth, yireh shelo kayam hamitzvah ketikuna im lo yichabein otah kavanah. It seems to be, according to the Torah, at least according to the Bach's interpretation of the Torah, you have not fulfilled the mitzvah if you've not thought of it. Ulechein katav b'hilchot elu, therefore the Torah writes in our laws, v'yichavein, etc., that you should have intent. Last few lines, Gam ken shetzarich sheyikabein b'shat yeshivat hasukah, that you must have kavanah in the moment that you are dwelling in the sukkah, hatam hamechuvan or mechuvein b'mitzvah. So, according to this interpretation, the Torah is saying that the mitzvah that we're about to do in a few minutes after we go into the sukkah is a harder mitzvah to perform than mitzvot that seem harder, right? Why is it harder? Because you have to think. Why is it harder? Because it's not enough to say the blessing, put your tuchus in a chair and say, look, I've dwelled in a sukkah. If you have not thought about why you are dwelling in a sukkah, this might say that halachically, not mystically, not on some midrash. Now, we have to know why we are fulfilling the mitzvah of sukkah. We actually have to go into the question of what is the actual answer to the question of why we're supposed to fulfill the mitzvah of sukkah, because even that is fraught in textual controversy. So look at, where did I go here?
Just the back of the page.
The back of that page?
Yeah. Here.
Right. That is the source of a lot of commentary in the halachic works. Masechet Sukkah, Tractate Sukkah, makes sense, page 11. We have a Breita, meaning we have a text from the earlier Tanaitic era, from the era between about 70 to 200, brought in the later section of the Gemara as an authoritative text. Tanya, the Breita says, Ki vasukot hoshavti et bnei Yisrael. The Breita is quoting a different verse about Sukkot that says that because on Sukkot, in Sukkot, in booths, Rabbi Eliezer said, what are these Sukkot to which the reverse refers? Rabbi Eliezer says it's not a booth. It's God's divine glory, that intangible protection that God had with us throughout our time in the desert. Rabbi Akiva says, no, Sukkot mamash asulahem. They actually made Sukkot.
This is an unresolved machloket. Are we supposed to remind us of the metaphysical presence of God, who protects us not because of some formal, tangible barrier between us and the elements, but because that's how we know that we are not alone in the universe? The Talmud does not resolve the issue. If the Tur is right, that we have to know why we're sitting in the Sukkah to fulfill the obligation of Sukkah, then which way we resolve this machloket becomes not only significant as the Turei Zahav, one of the class Luke. There is these two rabbis, to Rabbi Akiva, according to Rabbi Akiva, who said, what's going on here is that we're commemorating actual booths. Ein revuta be'otan hasukot. There's nothing that's so extraordinary or special about those booths. Im kain ma zichron yeh b'davar. If what we're remembering are booths that are simply structures, why are we being asked to remember when we sit in the sukkah? Ela vaday hazikaron sha'az yatzanu mitzrayim. According to this reading, Rabbi Akiva is saying, it's not the booths that you're remembering. The booth for the booths, again, the next time we are in national calamity. V'nimtza ikar tachlit sukkah shalanu. That, according to the Rabbi Akivan position, is what we're supposed to be thinking about to save us. Aval Rabbi Eliezer, but according to Rabbi Eliezer, hava hiskir al nes acher dahainu hakafat ananei kavod. According to Rabbi Eliezer, when you're looking up, you're saying the schach reminds me of God's sheltering presence that I experience at all time. It doesn't commemorate a day. It doesn't commemorate a moment or an event, as if God's fundament is imminent, right nearby. God, it's a very different way of understanding Sukkot. And if we go back to the original text, if the Tur is right, or if the Bach's commentary on the Tur is right, if we're not thinking about either of these, no matter how many meals you have in the Sukkah, how much you sleep in there overnight with your children, how many guests you bring in and say the appropriate blessings, fundamentals of it. The rabbis of the Talmud did not resolve this conflict, Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Eliezer, and we're not here to resolve it either, right? I don't know which one was right, neither did the rabbis of the Talmud. But I would like us to consider that the next time we go into the Sukkah, whether 15 minutes from now or later on in our homes or next year, that if we're not looking at the schach and jumping from that's at all. So I wanted to invest your future dwelling civic here, or Saf Amidah, which we'll do as a Hecha Kedusha, 184, and then we go into the special Musaf for Sukkot, which is, well, I'll announce that page in a second. So Chatzi Kaddish.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמרבה
אמן.
דברך יותי ועמים מלכותי בחייכון ומכון וחי לכל בית ישראל בגלה וזמן קריב ימרו
אמן. יהי שמיר במבורך, אלוהי יתברך.
יתברך וישתבח ויתברך ותרומה ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה בריחו ויהי לה מכל ברכתה ושירתה
Shalom 456 in the Sim Shalom. Dave will begin the blessings. We'll say the Kedusha responsively. Then we go back to the blessings and say them entirely to ourselves in quiet, making all the not, there's been an option not on the first 2 days of Sukkot, but the intermediate days of Sukkot. And this is the 1 to 3rd day of Chol HaMoed when you have to choose it, right? 3rd day?
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avoteinu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak v'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel v'Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor v'Hanora v'Elyon Gomel Chasadim Tovim v'Konei Yaakov v'Zocher Chastei Avot Mivi Goel Livnei V'neihem Neman Shemo v'Yahava Melech Ozer, Ufoked Moshiach Umagen, Baruch Atah Adonai, Magen Avraham, Ufoked Sarah, Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai, Mechayim Eitim Atah, Rav Rachamim Rabim, Somech Noflim Berofei Cholim, Umatir Asurim, Umekayem Emunato, V'Shenei Ava. Michamocha b'geburot u'mido melech melech memit u'mechayeh u'matziach Baruch atah Adonai mechayei hametim. Na'aritzcha v'nakdishcha kesotziach sarfei kodesh hamakdishim shimcha b'kodesh kagatu v'yani v'yacha v'karazel zeh v'yamar
Kadosh, kadosh, kadosh,
Aret kevodo kevodo malei olam meshar tav shoalim zelazeh hayem enkam kevodo liumatam baruch yomei
Baruch Adonai,
Baruch kavod Adonai mim komo yifem berachamim v'yachonamam yachadim shemo erev v'boker b'chol yom tamid pamayim b'ahava shema omri
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad
Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Eloheinu Avinu Malkeinu Moshienu Vehu Yashmienu Beherachamav Sheinin Sheini Leinei Kol Chai Liolachem Elohim Hallelujah. Ledor lekigolacha ulenetzach netzachim kedushatcha nagdish v'shivchacha levidim levasholam voed kiel melech gadol v'kadosh ata baruch ata Adonai Haoed lakadosh. ישמחו מלכות השם ושלום
you're still davening, please continue at your own pace. We're going to continue with Hoshanot in the Lev Shalem. They're page 387. I don't have the page numbers at the Ziering, but there should be a page number you're told to go to at the end of Musaf. We open the ark, but we do not take a Sefer Torah out of the ark as we sing each line of the Hoshana, repeating after David. Page 387.
Hoshana lemancha Eloheinu, Hoshana
Hoshana lemancha Eloheinu, Hoshana.
Hoshana lemancha boreinu,
Hoshana lemancha boreinu, Hoshana.
Hoshana lemancha goaleinu, Hoshana.
Hoshana lemancha boreinu, Hoshana.
Hoshana lemancha dorsheinu, Hoshana.
Hoshana lemancha dorsheinu, Hoshana.
Hoshana,
Hoshana, Hoshana,
Hoshana,
Hoshana.
Hoshana,
Hoshana om Nitzarah kavavad Hoshana.
Hoshana bedad nevesh meshivat.
Hoshana bonenet bedad neve mishivat Hoshana.
Hoshana gomeret hilchot Shabbat. Hoshana.
Hoshana gomer hilchot Shabbat Hoshana.
Hoshana doreshet mesat Shabbat. Hoshana.
Hoshana doreshet masat Shabbat Hoshana.
Hoshana hakovat alpayim techum Shabbat. Hoshana.
Hoshana hakovat alpayim tchum Shabbat Hoshana.
Hoshana mishivat regal mishabat. Hoshana.
Hoshana mishivat regal mishabat Hoshana.
Hoshana zachor v'shamur mekayemet b'Shabbat Hoshana.
Hoshana zachor v'shamur mekayemet b'Shabbat Hoshana.
Hoshana chasha lemaher bi'at Shabbat Hoshana.
Hoshana chasha l'maher bi'at Shabbat Hoshana.
Hoshana torach kol mishisha Shabbat Hoshana.
Hoshana torach kol mishisha l'Shabbat Hoshana.
Hoshana yoshevet u'mametenet ad kalot Shabbat Hoshana.
Hoshana yoshevet mamtenet ad kalot Shabbat Hoshana.
Hoshana kavod ve'oneg korah l'Shabbat Hoshana.
Hoshana kavod ve'oneg korah l'Shabbat
Hoshana
Hoshana.
levushu chesot mechalefet b'Shabbat Hoshana.
Hoshana levushu chesud mechalevet b'Shabbat Hoshana.
Hoshana machal u'mishta mechina l'Shabbat Hoshana.
Hoshana machal mishta mechina l'Shabbat Hoshana.
Hoshana noam megadim menam emet l'Shabbat Hoshana.
Hoshana no megadim man emet l'Shabbat Hoshana.
Hoshana seudot shalosh mekayemet b'Shabbat Hoshana.
Hoshana seudot
b'Shabbat Hoshana.
Hoshana shtei chikarot botzat b'Shabbat Hoshana.
Hoshana poretet arba rishuyot b'Shabbat Hoshana.
Hoshana poretet arba rishuyot b'Shabbat Hoshana.
Hoshana tzivui hadlakat ner madleket b'Shabbat Hoshana.
Hoshana tzivui hadlakat ner madleket b'Shabbat Hoshana.
Hoshana kiddush hayom mekadeshet b'Shabbat Hoshana.
Hoshana kiddush
b'Shabbat Hoshana.
Hoshana renan shevim mafalel b'Shabbat Hoshana.
Hoshana shiva badat korah b'Shabbat Hoshana.
Hoshana shiva badat korah b'Shabbat Hoshana.
Hoshana tanchil lena leyom shekula Shabbat Hoshana.
Hoshana tanchil leyom shekula Shabbat Hoshana. Aniva Hoshiana. We continue silently. Koshada andan yitzike be'adona.
Bechok samta Ken Hoshana
Yishar kocham vadam.
Ken Hoshana Kashata Man
Koshada
Hoshana Sinai Hashim Hanzachor Shamar the Kochishi Hoshana Koshata Puk Dav Yochotava
Shadam Mitzotecha Tamim Yishashtun Utsem Hachlitzim Shiva Benachari Vashayim Kein Hoshana Koshata Shvuchite Yaakov Tashir Tashir
Shata Melcham Chabeliam Shalem Hoshana Koshata Ken Hoshana Koshata Modim Vachalev Lo Masami Koshata Yeke Bachadam Koshata Nium Kapul Ola Umincha Ken Hoshana Koshata Abba Ken Hoshana Koshata Tamid Yeshua Uratem Vachatim Bashava Nachal Yeshua Ken Hoshana Koshata Shvut Shite Yaakov Tashuvat Hashim Shvut Elo Ohale Yaakov Ken Hoshana Koshata Shomei Mitzvot V'chokei Yeshuat Lemashot Ken Hoshana
Aniva Hoshiana Shia et Amecha Uvarech et nachlatecha Ureim, 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 Ureim Mena Ureim Mena Seim Ad Haolam Shia et Amecha Uvarech
Nachatecha. Urei, 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 menasem ad haolam. Kaddish Shalem 203.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה,
אמן.
בעלמא דברך יותר ומלכותי בחייכון ומכון ובחייך בית ישראל, בגלה בזמן קריב ימרו, אמן. יש שמי רבה מברך, ועלה לעלמי עלמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר בתרומה מן הסי ותודה ותלה ותלה שמי קודשה בריחו. לעילם וכל ברכתה ושירתה תשבחתה ונחבתה דמירן ומרמה ואמרו אמן. תתקבל צלותה נבטו נכו ישראל, קודמו נשמע ואמרו אמן. יש שלום רבין שמעיה חיים עלינו גוי ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום מרמה ויעשה שלום עלינו וגוי ישראל ואמרו אמן.
Amen.
אין כאלוהינו
Eloheinu, en kadonenu, en kemakenu, en kemoshienu, micheloheinu, michadonenu, oy michemakenu, michemoshienu.
נודל אלוהינו, נודל אלוהינו, נודל אלוהינו, נודל מושיע. Baruch Eloheinu, Baruch Adonenu, Baruch Malkeinu,
Baruch Moshienu, Atahu Eloheinu, Atahu Adonenu, Atahu Malkeinu, Atahu Moshienu, Atahu Shektiru,
Avoteinu, Lefanecha, Ektoret Asamim.
Please rise for Aleinu 205, 183, 510.
Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, l'ateit gedula leot seven reshit, shelo asanu gogei haratzot, velo samanu kimishpachot ha'adama, shelo samachotenu kahem, vegor aleinu kachol hamonam, ve'anachnu korim, u'mishtachavim u'modim, לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. כי אדוני הוא אלוהים השמיים והארץ מתחתנו, אדם כן הקו אחד אלוהינו, דיברה מהר תזק לדבר. כי המלכות שלך יום תמלוך בכבוד, ככתוב בתורתך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד.
נאמר בהיה אדוני למלך כל הארץ. ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו And for the anti-penultimate day, we say Psalm 27 for the holiday season. That's on 113 in the Lev Shalem. 80 in the Slim Shalom, 40 in the Sim Shalom. Go, Joey. Psalm 27.
Ziering bestate rolle van Ziering gaat hij hier maar je had wat hij had begrepen dat hij weet waar je wil doen. Ki avivi imi asmeni marana yasmeni haveni adonai da. Lule hem antil rubtu benayt spirits kai kavel and I had like me betzi becha ve kavel adonai.
Kaddish Tom Mourner's Kaddish.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה.
אמן.
בעלמא דברך חירותי וימליך מלכותי. בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל. בעגלה ובזמן קריב אמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מברך לעולם נעלמי עלמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא. ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי קודשה בריחו. לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תשבחתה ונחמתה, דמירן בעלמא ואמרו אמן. יהי שלמה רבה מן שמיה, וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום. עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן.
Shakoach to David. Shakoach to our Torah readers today who were Eliana Becker and Michael Becker and Jennifer Lowe and Marshall Kramer, and to Eliana for leading the Haftarah, and to Rabbi Schatz for leading Psukei de Zimra. Just a few announcements tonight, 6 p.m. We're bringing back Shabbat Mincha and Sudash Lishit and Havdalah in person, really for the first time since the beginning of the pandemic. So come at 6 p.m. We'll have Mincha, we'll have some Torah study with Rabbi Schatz, and do an end Shabbat together with a little bit of Sudash Lishit. And we'll see what the response is to it. It might be something that we'll continue doing as we normally would have pre-pandemic, or we might make a different decision. But that is tonight at 6 o'clock. Any other?
Hoshana Rabbah, 7 a.m. on Monday morning.
And Simchat Torah is coming. More emails will go out reminding you the timing and the details of what we're doing and when. And we will conclude with Adon Olam, so we can go into the Sukkah and have Kiddush together with the library minion, who's also finishing just around this time as well. Well-timed, everybody.
Not on Zmirot?
Not on Zmirot.
No.
Adon Olam Hashem
Lach
Alach
v'terem kol yetzir nivra le'ein nasa v'cheso kol.
Hazai Melech Shemo Nikra B'Yacharei Kichlot HaKol Levado Yimloch Nora Vehu Haya Vehu Omer Vehu Yeh B'Tifara Vehu Yeh B'Tifara Vehu Ve'yen Sheni Leham Shilo Le'achira Beli Reishin Veli Tachlit Velo Ha'oz Ve'Hamisra Velo Ha'oz Ve'Hamisra Vehu Eli V'chai Goali V'tzor Chevli V'Yehitzara Vehu Nisi Humanosli Venat Kosi B'Yom Ekra Venat Kosi B'Yom Ekra Be'ado Apkid Ruchi V'Yetisha Ve'ayira Ve'imruchi Gebiati Adonai li velo ira Adonai li velo ira.
Good Shabbos, Moedim L'Simcha. Join in the Sukkah for Kiddush.